Hello and welcome to our first episode in 2025. This is EU Decoded, the EPP Group's podcast, which brings you the latest in EU and global politics. And in this episode, we will cover topics ranging from EU rules for digital platforms to the Russian shadow fleet activities in the Baltic Sea. So this week, members of the European Parliament returned to Strasbourg for a new plenary session, and one of the liveliest debates focused on the Digital Services Act, or DSA, which regulates online platforms such as social networks, marketplaces, app stores and so on. And its goal is to prevent illegal and harmful activities as well as the spread of disinformation. This week's debate highlighted its critical role in protecting democracy on social media platforms, especially against foreign interference and biased algorithms. The EPP Group's message is clear. Social media platforms that operate and make money in the EU must follow EU rules.
Das Ziel war nämlich gerade die Meinungsfreiheit auch im digitalen Zeitalter zu sichern und gleichzeitig den Schutz des allgemeinen Persönlichkeits.
Andreas Schwab noted that the DSA's goal was to safeguard freedom of expression in the digital age and at the same time protect the general right to privacy of all citizens in the European Union. Essentially, enforcement of the Digital Services Act is crucial to protecting democracies and countering misinformation and interference while upholding freedom of speech.
Demokratie lebt von Demokraten und die Meinungsfreiheit lebt von Pluralität.
And continuing with the theme of democracy, one of the largest democracies in the world has inaugurated a new president. Donald Trump has returned to the Oval Office, and his re-election has sparked questions about the future of EU-US relations. MEP Michal Szczerba emphasises that the relationship with the new American administration must be pragmatic and built on partnership.
Jakie muszą być relacje nasze z nową administracją w Ameryce? Pragmatyczne I partnerskie. Ale kwestia bezpieczeństwa.
He notes that Europe's foremost priority is security, with the defence of Ukraine being central to safeguarding the continent. Meanwhile, MEP Zhelyana Zovko highlighted the tectonic shifts Europe will face and called for decisive action.
As we anticipate President Trump's next moves in trade, we must simultaneously strengthen our trade partnerships worldwide and enhance our competitiveness. It is possible to make both Europe and America great, but only if we work together. We need to strengthen our diplomatic channels with the new administration while advocating for European producers and understanding the American business model.
Well, the American presidency is not the only one making the headlines. As of the 1st of January, Poland has assumed the presidency of the European Council. And this week, its Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, addressed the members of the European Parliament with a powerful message for the European Union and the world.
Jeśli uważamy, że zmiana administracji amerykańskiej I inne okoliczności to jest w jakimś sensie skok w nieznane, to przypomnijmy sobie, że Europa budowała swoją wielkość, bo nigdy nie bała się iść w to nieznane z podniesioną głową.
If we believe that the change of the American administration and other circumstances are a leap into the unknown, let us remember that Europe built its greatness because it was never afraid to go into that unknown with its head held high. The Prime Minister's words were welcomed by the chairman of the EPP Group, Manfred Weber, who reminded everyone that it was precisely Donald Tusk who brought the rule of law back to Poland.
Dear Donald, in 2022, when you handed me the reins of the EPP in Rotterdam, you said in your speech there in Rotterdam, I returned to Polish politics to win the battle for democracy, the rule of law and a European Poland. And it was a tough fight. And you won. Poland is again in the heart of Europe.
Donald Tusk presented the priorities of the Polish presidency, which can be summed up into one word: security. This includes defence, security of people, borders, businesses, health security, and resilience to disinformation and foreign interference. And continuing with the theme of security, the European Parliament discussed another pressing threat to the EU member states, the Russian shadow fleet in the Baltic Sea. MEP Mika Aaltola explained what this threat actually entails. Russia uses its shadow fleet to circumvent sanctions and damage critical infrastructure. With these actions, it deliberately and negligently tests reactions, according to MEP Altola, concluding that Russia and China are using the Baltic Sea as a testing ground and that the shadow fleet vessels must be identified and fully subjected to sanctions without delay. In less than 15 months, there have been 3 different sabotages of critical undersea infrastructure in the Baltic Sea, damaging multiple underwater data cables, power lines, and a gas pipeline, all caused by ships dragging their anchors on the seabed for long distances. For example, in December, a power cable and several telecommunications cables running between Finland and Estonia were cut by an oil tanker sailing under the Cook Islands flag. The Finnish Coast Guard detained the vessel in Finland's territorial waters. These ships often sail under flags of other countries to avoid sanctions. MEP Mikael Gahler stresses the need for preparedness for this type of situation.
Among the multifold wake-up calls that we are getting to assess the Russian threat to our countries, the demolition of critical infrastructure such as sea cables is just one further example. And I think Putin would be disappointed if we discussed whether that was accidental or who was responsible. He wants us to know that he is able to exploit and test our vulnerabilities. In these circumstances, it is good to see that we are increasingly prepared.
Let's shift focus now back across the Atlantic, but to Venezuela, where the rightful winner of the presidential election, Edmundo González, still hasn't been allowed to take office. Despite his victory, Nicolás Maduro has refused to relinquish his power, even going so far as to hold his own inauguration while banning González from returning to Venezuela.
Maduro es el tirano que perdió las elecciones y secuestró con armas la democracia a todo el pueblo de Venezuela. Es el criminal que amenaza, tortura...
Maduro is a tyrant who lost the election and kidnapped democracy from the people of Venezuela, according to MEP Dolores Montserrat, as she called for tougher sanctions against Maduro and a trial before the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity.
Sim, Maduro perdeu. Sim, o candidato da oposição ganhou. Vi-os como vi este parlamento.
Yes, Maduro lost. Yes, the opposition candidate won, stated MEP Sebastião Bugallo, as he reminded the parliament that the G7 countries and the European Commission acknowledged that the Democrats won, but that democracy has not yet won in Venezuela. The EPP Group continues to stand with the people of Venezuela and its president-elect. Another key priority for the EPP Group in the coming years is demography. This week, the European Parliament addressed the pressing issue of demographic decline, which is impacting daily life and threatening Europe's competitiveness. Implementing the European Commission's Demography Toolbox is a way forward.
Interessanterweise in den letzten Monaten auch bei allen Unternehmensbesuchen, wo es natürlich die aktuellen Schwierigkeiten geht, wirtschaftlich schwierige Lage.
MEP Dennis Radke shared that many companies have recently been warning against the current economic situation, but how they also need people to work, drawing attention to the age pyramid in the workforce. The demographic challenges must be addressed before they become irreversible, and Europe must invest in both younger and older generations to stay competitive. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us again. Make sure to follow the EPP Group on social media for all updates. So until next time, goodbye.